Hello and welcome to GCSE Infection Response with Mrs Castanera. We are on lesson 7. What are fungal and protist diseases and how do they spread? So the title for today's lesson is lesson 7, fungal and protists, and our key words are fungi and protist. So if we could start off by having a go at the knowledge check, please. If you pause the video whilst you attempt those questions. Right, let's go through those questions. So question 1, define the term microbe. So a microbe is a microorganism. Make sure you're using another coloured pen to mark these questions. Tick them if you get them right, put a cross if you don't attempt them or haven't attempted them or have got them wrong, and make sure you're writing your corrections in that different colour as well. Question 2. State what a bacterium has instead of a nucleus. So it has a loop of DNA or a plasmid. Okay, question 3. State the 3 types of bacteria. So we have rod bacteria, which are like sticks. We have the circle or round bacteria, sometimes called coccus, and we have the spiral bacteria. Question 4. State 2 symptoms of salmonella. So you can have any 2 from fever, cramps, vomiting and diarrhea. Question 5. How can gonorrhea be prevented? Antibiotics and barrier methods of contraception. So barrier contraceptives essentially is condoms. Okay, question 6. State how salmonella is transmitted. So the bacteria is on the food or in the food. Question 7. Define the term health. So you should know this one. Health is a state of physical and mental well-being. Question 8. Define the term pathogen. So pathogen is a disease-causing microbe. And if you could give yourself a mark out of 8. So if you got 4 or less, you need to review the previous lessons because we should know at least 4 or 5 of those really by now, minimum. Okay, we're going to move on. So we're going to skip the learning activity as this is about bacterial growth plate, and we did not do the practical activity as this is home-based learning. So, overview of today's lesson, we're going to understand how fungal diseases spread and know some examples. We are also going to be able to understand the protist disease, malaria, and its life cycle and transmission. So let's first talk about fungi. Fungi are eukaryotic cells, so these are the more complex cells. So last lesson we talked about prokaryotics, the simpler cells. Eukaryotics are complex cells. They contain a nucleus in a membrane. So if it has a nucleus in a membrane, it is a eukaryotic cell. If it does not have a nucleus in a membrane, it is a prokaryotic cell. So they cannot photosynthesize and absorb their nutrients from food. Okay, they can be single cells, okay, such as yeast, or consist of hypha. So hypha or hyphae are narrow tubes of branching filaments. Okay, they are multicelled. They usually, and this is a weird one for fungi, they usually reproduce using spores. Okay, they do have other ways of reproducing, but usually they reproduce using spores. So fungal infections can affect both plants and animals. So both plants and animals can be infected with fungus. Some examples of animal fungal infections are thrush and athlete's foot. And when we say animal, we're also talking about humans because we are included in the category of animals. Okay, so let's have a look at some of this. So fungal spores, what are fungal spores? They are microscopic particles that allow the fungi to reproduce. They're very similar to seeds. So let's pop in about that. Spores. Right over here at spores. Okay, so spores are similar to seeds, but they are microscopic in size. Okay, so these infections that we talked about, thrush and athlete's foot. So thrush is a yeast infection. And that's just a fungus that exists naturally in the body. And so thrush tends to grow in warm, moist conditions. In fact, to be honest, most funguses grow easily in warm, moist conditions. And athlete's foot is another fungus called the tinea fungus, and that grows on the feet. And for this one, it needs to be through direct contact with an infected person or by touching surfaces contaminated with the fungus. So if you're thinking warm, moist conditions are the best place for these fungal infections to thrive, you can imagine how many of these spores and contaminated surfaces exist in places like showers, locker room floors, and at the swimming pool. So those are places that you would commonly get athlete's foot. So there's a video here, so if you want to go to this YouTube website, sorry, go to the YouTube link and watch the video. If you pause the video whilst you do that. Okay, so welcome back. A common fungal disease that affects plants, so the previous ones affected animals, is rose black spot. So rose black spot is black or purple spots that develop on the leaves, and then they turn yellow and drop off. So with less leaves, that means the plant carries out less photosynthesis. That is not good. That's similar to a person or an animal eating less food. The disease can be spread by water and wind, so it's very easy for this to be transmitted between plants. A simple form of treatment is using a fungicide, and also you can remove the infected leaves. So it's very easy to treat, easy to catch, easy to treat. Okay, now let's look into protists. So, protists are a very diverse collection of organisms. They're a part of the biological kingdom called Protista. They're not plants, they're not animals, they're not bacteria, and they are not fungi. They're essentially, it's basically just a collection of things that don't fit into any other category. So if it's not a plant, animal, bacteria, or fungus, we've essentially decided to chuck it in this protist category. It is the this is something else group. So whilst there are exceptions that exist, they're primarily microscopic and unicellular. Okay, so that means they're made up of a single cell. But let's write a little bit of note of what protists are, because they are a really diverse collection. So, So I've just written here that protists are essentially all living things that aren't animals, plants, bacteria, or fungi. So the cells of protists are actually very organised. They're highly organised, they have a nucleus, and they have specialised cellular components called organelles. So they have organelles, they've got a nucleus, they're very organised. Some of them are parasites. So a parasite is essentially an organism that lives on another organism, and it has to live on it or inside it to survive. So it has to live upon or inside another organism to stay alive. Most protists are transferred by a vector, which is another organism. But that vector organism, the transmitting one, doesn't get the disease, which is a really odd way of transferring it, but that's how it works. The protists themselves can be divided up into how they move is a good way of deciding how to categorise them. So let's write a new sentence here. Protists can be divided up into groups based on how they move. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so you can all see that better. Okay, so they have multiple ways of moving. They can have cilia, which are tiny hairs that waft them around. They can have flagella, which are essentially tail-like whips. They're bigger than cilia, and so it moves around. Usually they have one, but sometimes they have more than one flagella. And the third option is pseudopodia, which is a very odd word. Pseudo meaning like or similar to, podia meaning feet. So essentially they have little moving bits that help them move along like little feet. So pseudo means similar to or like, podia meaning feet. So feet-like protrusions that help them crawl, ooze, or scoot along. So those are three categories we can categorize them into, a bit like we categorize animals into the 5 animal kingdoms. We can categorize protists into the 3 types of movement that they have. Okay, so let's talk about a vector. So vector is the third organism or separate organism that doesn't get the disease. And if you have a look at, this video, you will be able to read or see more about what a vector is. So let's look at malaria then. Malaria, as we've learnt a bit more about it already, but malaria is the most well-known of the protist diseases. It's a vector. The vector in this case, it has a vector to transmit it. In this case, it's a mosquito. And it picks up the protist called Plasmodium vivax. You don't need to know that name, you just can call it malaria, when it feeds up off of other animals. So essentially, an animal has malaria, it gets bitten by a mosquito. The mosquito does not get ill, does not get malaria, but it does carry the protist onto the human, where it bites the human, injects the protist into the human, and infects the human. So the mosquito bites the human, injects the protist into the human, and then that person, it replicates and causes an immune response, and that person has malaria and is rather unwell. It can cause repeat episodes of fever, and it can be fatal. That means you can die from it. So it's a very serious disease. It's spread by the vector, mosquitoes. So one way to reduce the amount of malaria going around is to remove standing water sources. So that means stagnant, still, not moving water, which is where mosquitoes breed. People can also protect themselves by using insect repellents, nets over their beds when they're in an area that has quite a lot of mosquitoes. Okay, so if you could watch the following video, it's this link to YouTube, and answer the questions about protist transmission and prevention. There are 12 questions, they go on to the next page. Okay, if you could have a go at that, please. Pause the video whilst you do that. Okay, so come to the checkpoint question. Explain the effects of the tobacco mosaic virus on the growth of a tomato plant. So you need to explain the effects. So first of all, you need to tell us what the effects are, then you need to explain them. And the effects are the tobacco mosaic virus on the growth of a tomato plant. And there are four marks available here. So what are the effects of this virus on the growth of a tomato plant? Can you explain why those are? Pause the video whilst you have a go at these questions, please, and then we'll go through that. Okay, so there are 5 points available to gain marks from, and you only need 4 of them. So 1 mark for each of them. So if you said the leaves turn yellow or white or discoloured, you get a mark. If you said there's not as much chlorophyll, then you get a mark. If you said that photosynthesis is reduced, then you get another mark. If you said there's less glucose for respiration or less energy in the plant, or it's not getting as much food or nutrition, you will also get a mark. And then if you said the plants will not grow as well, you'll get another mark. So if you could give yourself a mark out of 4, please, for that. And then we're going to move on to the knowledge and application check. So if you could pause the video whilst you have a go at those questions, please. So let's go through those. Question 1. Identify what type of cells fungi are. So, fungi are eukaryotes. That's the more complex type. State how fungi reproduce. They reproduce through a process called binary fission. That's where they duplicate themselves, or they produce clones of themselves by copying themselves and splitting into 2. Identify a symptom of rose black spot. Purple or black spots on the leaves. Make sure you're marking these in another colour to make it clear what you've got marks for and what is being corrected. Question 4. State a form of treatment for rose black spot. So there's 2 treatments. There is antifungals, so you can get those as sprays, and that gets rid of the fungus. And you can also, or you can also remove the affected leaves. So either of those will get you a mark. Question 5, define the term unicellular. So it means it's made up of a single cell. So a single-celled organism. Define the term vector. So it's an organism that transmits a pathogen without getting infected itself. And whilst a mosquito is a vector, it would not be a correct answer to this question. So question 7, identify where mosquitoes breed. They breed in stagnant water. So stagnant means unmoving. Question 8, define the term CHD. So CHD stands for coronary heart disease. Question 9. A garden centre wants to prevent transmission of a disease between plants. What practical advice would you give them? So the best practical advice for them is to do regular treatment with fungicides. The reason for this is that many plant diseases are easily transmitted through the wind or the air or water, and so to ensure that any fungus that does land on the plants through the spores doesn't cause extensive damage to all the plants, that's why you would spray fungicides to ensure that those funguses don't get a chance to get a hold of and spread on any particular plant, and they can't spread between the plants because the plants are regularly treated with an antifungal or a fungicide. Question 10. The garden centre notices that a rose has rose black spot. How should they treat the disease? Okay, so they're going to want to do probably a couple of things. Okay, so they will want to remove any infected leaves. They will want to quarantine the plant, remove it away from other plants. And they will also probably want to do an antifungal treatment. So any one of those three things can give you a mark. Question 11. Why is malaria so hard to eradicate? So the reason is because there are just vast numbers of mosquitoes. It literally is not possible to control them because mosquitoes will breed and lay their eggs in a number of really hard to access places. So in swamps, it's very hard to get to that sort of area. So anywhere by an ocean or a river, there's just too many places that they can breed and have their eggs and everything, and so it's just not possible to control and completely eliminate mosquitoes. So first of all, there's a lot of mosquitoes and it's very hard to destroy all of the breeding places. In fact, we don't really want to eliminate their breeding grounds because all these areas of stagnant water represent areas of very abundant and varied wildlife, very large ecosystems that we don't want to destroy. So it's very tricky to control malaria. It's a balancing act. So if you could give yourself a mark out of 11 for that, please. If you have 5 or more, then you're doing very well. If you've got less than 5, then really you need to be having another go. Having a review of this lesson in particular. If you have got more than 9, you're doing very, very well indeed. Well done. So again, there's some keywords here for this lesson which you need to be aware of and you need to know what they are. And that is the end of this lesson. Thank you very much.